Doesn't it matter? Why don't deficits matter anymore? We do have a great economy, but and we have the ability to service the debt, but it just, I don't know, it's hard not to feel bad about it for some reason.
Well, deficits don't matter because they're a distraction from the much bigger problem, which is the total level of government spending. It can't be forgotten that when Congress takes in dollars, they don't stare lovingly at them. Every dollar that Congress gets to spend is an extra dollar that Nancy Pelosi, Kevin McCarthy, Mitch McConnell, and Chuck Schumer have over the economy. And so let's ask the basic question. What's the better economic scenario? An annual budget deficit of $1 trillion and $1.5 trillion in spending, or an annual balanced budget of $4 trillion? Obviously, you take the deficit scenario every time because it's the total dollar. It doesn't matter how Congress gets the money. What matters is that Congress is spending the money in ways inimical to progress.
That is an interesting, and I figured that if I was nodding, Steve would have indigestion. But let me ask you, Dave, does that, you don't feel that way, do you?
No, well, first of all, let's agree. It doesn't matter now to either Republicans or Democrats up on Capitol Hill. They both have conspired together to produce these high deficits and continue to increase the debt. I do agree with John that the bigger problem is the size of government and the question of should we be spending all of this money when there's tremendous waste buried into it. And Steve made a very good point, the one I was going to make, which is this may be less of a problem now when we're in very good economic times, but it is sort of loading the shotgun aimed back at our economy if in the future interest rates have to go back up, and then this tremendous debt service will dramatically limit the ability or force us to borrow even more at a very costly rate in the future. It's human nature. When things are good, people spend more. The government, Republicans and Democrats, are very much susceptible to that. What they're not doing is being wise to prepare for the future.
John, what about, John, I worry about all of our promises, not just the $22 trillion, but just the total unfunded liabilities. That's not a problem either with Social Security, Medicare, everything else?
Well, it's crucial to point out, I mean, I'll first acknowledge, Dave's right. Look, politicians exist to spend money. That's why they're there, and that's always going to be. But I think Dave would also agree that markets are rather wise, and markets have priced well into the future. If you look back to 1980, the federal budget deficit was $900 billion, and the yield on the 10-year Treasury was 11%. Fast forward to the present, it's $22 trillion, and as Joe alludes, with unfunded liabilities, it's quite a bit larger. The yield on the 10-year is what, roughly 2%. It's not much higher on the 30-year. So this is not me saying that government spending doesn't matter. I think government spending is a huge barrier to progress. But let's not pretend that markets aren't very wise, and what they're saying is that revenues will not be a problem. And in fact, what they're paradoxically saying is that revenues are too high, and they'll be too high in the future. And because they are, investors are lining up to buy debt because they trust these income streams well into the future.
That's amazing. You don't think that way, do you, Leisman? Did you ever think that way before?
Which way? That
Dave
that
just
deficits
said.
don't matter?
No, that there's going to be plenty of... we hear every day that, oh, you need to raise revenue one way or another, or you got to raise revenue. We hear that every day. People crying about revenue needs to be raised higher than it would. Taxes need to be raised. Marginal rates got to be raised. Capital gains. We got to do something to raise revenue. Raise revenue. Government needs more. Raise revenue.
I've been a deficit dove for a long time, and I've thought that, just very quickly, to go back to what was said earlier, it matters what we spend on. Right? Not all government spending is equal. There's very wasteful government spending, and there's government spending that helps pay back in the future. And that matters a lot for what Blanchard was saying.
Okay. All right, Dave, John,
Great.
thank you.
Thanks,
Steve.
Coming up, an interview you don't want to miss. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin is going to join us live right after this break. We're going to discuss